channel, click the bell icon for updates.
You're watching Strat News Global and Ramananda Sengupta. We've been tracking the events happening in Bangladesh, and with me today is Mr. Nitin Gokhale, the editor-in-chief of statnews.com, to tell us what has been going on and what we can expect now. Thanks, Nitin, for joining us. Thank you so very much. Let's cut right to the chase. What is the latest that you've been hearing about what's been going on? I know Hasina's landed in India, but now what?
Well, thanks, Ramanand. Yeah, in fact, we did one live a little while ago on
Yes.
Strat News Global, and this is like an update. So the first update, like you just mentioned, that former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, a strong woman of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has apparently landed at the Hindon Air Base near Delhi in the C-130J Bangladesh Air Force plane that carried her from one of the Bangladesh air bases outside Dhaka just about half an hour ago. We don't know what her next move is going to be. Is she going to stay in India? Is India going to give her shelter or asylum like it had done more than 53 years ago when she was a young lady? Her father was being persecuted by the Pakistanis that time. Or is she going to London? We do not know, as some reports suggest, because the Awami League and the Mujibur Rahman family have long old links in London and supporters there. So, and her son and daughter both operate out of London. So, possible destination could be London. But we'll wait and see for an official word either from India or from her entourage or her herself. But the fact is that she had to leave in a hurry. She had to resign first at the advice of the Bangladeshi army. Apparently, this footage that is showing the helicopter is one that took her out of the residence and took her to one of the Bangladesh air bases safely. That's small mercies, of course, that she is alive and kicking. Because many other places in the recent past, in the past 10 years or so, Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, Hosni Mubarak, all of these people have, fared much worse when they were ousted or they were unseated in a coup. This is not exactly a coup. This was, I think, a well thought out, considered decision. The Bangladeshi army chief apparently told her that time is up. And they cannot save her government or her if she doesn't resign and leave the country, because the mobs had gone out of hand. There was no respite in sight, and the army didn't want to fire on its own people. And this is the irony. She might think that the very army chief, who was also a distant relative, General Zaman, has let her down in a way, but I think he did a pragmatic he took a pragmatic decision, because to avoid further bloodshed, I think this decision was taken. So that's the latest as we know, we hear at the moment.
But there's also a lot of violence going on right now in Bangladesh itself, and I'm also hearing that a lot of Indian properties are getting sort of attacked. But I was just thinking that with her gone out of the way, and with the army chief calling in all the politicians, what kind of a political setup should we expect? Is the army going to take charge for a while, or is it new interim government coming in?
You heard, Ram, you would have heard the army chief's brief 8-minute long address or a press interaction in Dhaka, which was telecast live in Bangla, of course. And since both of us understand Bangla, what I could make out was that, first of all, he mentioned that he wants to stop the violence immediately. He appealed to the people of Bangladesh that please stop the violence, and it doesn't serve any purpose. He also said that the Prime Minister has resigned and gone, and you have faith in the army. If you have faith in the army, we'll restore the situation, is what he said. And he also then announced that he had a meeting with all the political parties, or most political parties. And interestingly, the first name that he took of a political party that attended, parties that attended that meeting, was of Jamaat-e-Islami. And to
Right.
think that just about 4 days ago, Jamaat-e-Islami was banned by Bangladesh for anti-national activities. So
Absolutely.
clearly, it's going to be Islamist, jihadi-dominated kind of a government. Then, of course, he mentioned other parties, BNP and smaller parties. And pointedly, the army chief said that the Awami League was not represented in that meeting. So clearly, this is the end of the road for the Awami League as well as Sheikh Hasina. And the
Mhm.
anger has clearly spilled over. And this is the irony that 53 years ago, it was Awami League which was cynosure of all eyes in Bangladesh. They were the heroes for getting the liberation of Bangladesh done with India's help and because of their popular support that they had across the country. But clearly, over these last 10 years, Sheikh Hasina was getting increasingly not just isolated but also unpopular. And
Mhm.
amongst a section of the people, of course, her Awami League support was intact. But even that
Mhm.
collapsed in the face of this onslaught by her opponents and clearly other troublemakers in Bangladesh. And
Right.
here we are that she's fled the country. So the next dispensation is not clear, but it's going to be an
Mhm.
interim government, as the army chief has said. And that might be a problem for the country, which is already teetering on an economic collapse. So we'll
Mhm.
have to wait again and watch, because if the lumpen elements take over and if violence rages on, that's going to be a
Mhm.
major problem for the incoming government or the new government. So we'll have to wait and watch.
Before I sort of ask you what all this means for India, something that I was thinking about is that Sheikh Hasina seems to have rubbed two very large powers the wrong way. One is China over the Tista thing, and a lot of other things, and one is also the US, because I remember they said that they wouldn't give them visas and over the last elections. So how credible are reports that both these countries were sort of somehow involved
Well,
in all this?
certainly these are credible reports. These are not just reports by commentators, but there are intelligence reports that have been available with India and other countries. The US has been
Hmm.
perpetually against her, at least for a decade or so, for what they called her autocratic behavior, her non-democratic credentials, and how she had rigged the elections in the previous edition as well as in this current edition. And they always
Right.
wanted, and she didn't sort of play ball with US. So the deep establishment in Washington, DC, always wanted her to be ousted. So they have clearly played a part. There is no denying that fact. And
Hmm.
Pakistan, because and China, because Pakistan is
Hmm.
involved, and Pakistan has a long-held grudge for breaking away from the United Pakistan in 1971.
Of course.
I had
Hmm.
always had interest in fishing in troubled waters or creating trouble in what was East Pakistan and now what is Bangladesh. And
Hmm.
certainly China would have helped them here, because China was also, like you mentioned, unhappy with what Sheikh Hasina did. She did not play ball with China on certain issues and certain projects. And
Hmm.
therefore, they would have also backed the Pakistani attempts, and the Pakistani intelligence agency, the ISI, is known to be active, and some of the collaborators in Bangladesh have been uh, working with Pakistan to create trouble for Sheikh Hasina, which has manifested in what we've seen over the past month or so. Of course, she made certain mistakes. She got isolated. She didn't get the correct feedback, perhaps, and became completely oblivious to what the sentiments on the ground were. There have been
Hmm.
reports and commentaries about how ground beneath her feet was shifting, despite good economic progress, good GDP growth, and better HDI indexes, HDI Human Development Index indices, as far as Bangladesh was concerned.
Hmm.
Ultimately, the lumpen elements seem to have taken over, and some kind of frustration has spilled over, resulting in what we have seen today.
Hmm. Coming back to what it means for India, I remember you had once asked me to interview one of their former foreign secretaries, and I think the headline we used in one of those stories was, "The relationship is the best it's ever been." I think we really have to do a rethink on that now.
Yeah, in fact, she was India's best friend in the region. She
Hmm.
did, and she was not ashamed about it. She was not furtive about it, or she was not hiding it. That friendship that she had, and the support that she extended to India, and the support India extended to her. That was never hidden, or she never made any attempt to sort of deny it or downplay it, because
Hmm.
it benefited her, certainly India's friendship. And India, of course, benefited from her firm stand against jihadists and terrorists, and some
Hmm.
of the extreme elements in Bangladesh, who were, of course, acting on at the behest of the ISI against India from the Bangladeshi soil, and some of the Indian insurgent groups from the northeast of India who had taken
Right.
shelter, really acted very tough against them, wound up their businesses, arrested them, handed them over. All that had happened. So she certainly reciprocated, and I think she was India's best friend in the region. It's going to be a great
Really.
mountain to climb for India to restore relations back to what they were during Sheikh Hasina's time. But that's the
Hmm.
way the cookie crumbles in the Indian subcontinent. We saw
You know,
this
but
in Sri Lanka. Yeah, yes, yes, Ram.
I was just thinking that we also have a lot of investments in Bangladesh, and we also have, transit rights and all kinds of other things in place. All those will also take a hit, that means now.
They will take a hit, like you mentioned, that Indian establishments have been targeted, it seems. But this could be a temporary phenomenon. Ultimately, let's not forget, and I think the people who take over Bangladesh governance in Bangladesh will realize
Hmm.
that they need money to sustain the economy, sustain the governance structure. And ultimately,
Hmm.
India will step up in doing what it did, something similar to Sri Lanka, by
Right.
extending $4 billion worth of grants and concessional loans to shore up the economy and rescue it from doldrums. So I think,
Hmm.
given that fact that Bangladesh economy is also not doing too well, in fact, it's on the verge of collapse. India will
Hmm.
have to ultimately come to Bangladesh's rescue, and this is something where India will have to play its cards well. Will have to be nimble-footed, because remember, this is not the time when China will come to its aid, because
Right.
China has proved time and again, be it in Sri Lanka or Maldives, when the uh, stuff hits the fans, they are not there on the ground or not there to help their friends, even if
Hmm.
they want to, extract their pound of flesh. India has no
Hmm.
strings attached when they give these grants or loans. They've proved it time and again in the region. I think India will again be called to do all this, is what my sense is.
What about the US?
Well, the US will wait and watch and keep telling India, lecturing India, don't do it. But now that Sheikh Hasina is gone, it might just want to, sort of replace China, or have better influence than before, and not allow
Hmm.
China to make the inroads or keep the inroads that they have done in the past intact. So I think that's where I think the US will come in. It will want to install its own choices, or people of their own choice in the
Hmm.
power structure. It might want to do that, and that's where I think India will have to be careful on how these powers play out, or these powers shenanigans play out in Bangladesh. Really,
Hmm. I also heard that our BSF chief is gone to Bengal to sort of step up security along the border. A lot of people are fleeing Bangladesh to come to India. What happens now? I mean, now that earlier I remember Mamata Banerjee had said that I will give you shelter, but I don't think we can shelter so many people.
no, and I think that's not something that Mamata Banerjee that time really thought through the entire approach that she wanted to take, or she wants to sort of implement. But
Hmm.
now she would realize that that remark might come to haunt her if large number of people come into West Bengal, as they might. And there are two categories of people. There will be a lumpen element which would want to march towards the India border and create trouble, where India will
Right.
be forced, or the border security force may be forced to then act tough against them. And this is what some troublemakers would want to do, where again India will have to be careful and therefore keep the channel of communication open uh, with the Bangladeshis, especially the border guarding force in Bangladesh. And secondly, the other fear is that the remaining Hindus in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, might get targeted and their establishments might get vandalized or burned down or completely destroyed. And that's where India will have to play a very delicate balancing game on how much it can push Bangladesh to protect the Hindus, because so far India has taken a stand that it's Bangladesh's internal affair, whatever the unrest was happening. But now that the crisis is at India's doorstep, India will have to do more than just issue a statement or advisories rather to different people, Indian origin people, Hindus, and even 6,000 odd Indians who are supposed to be not settled but at least working in Bangladesh in various capacities. So that is going to be India's challenge, and how the new government in Bangladesh handles all this will be a test of their character, their patience, and their ability to balance the internal domestic demands with external relations, especially with India.
I know the situation is very fluid and that it's far too early to take a call, but perhaps, as a last question, in your personal opinion, you just mentioned that sometime down the line, they will have to come to us again for help. How long do you think that will take? Are we back to square one and do we have to rebuild bridges totally with them now, or how does it work?
No, India will have to, like I said, do a very delicate tightrope walk. It cannot be seen to be siding with, let's say, a blatantly, I would say, fundamentalist regime. If it comes into power, or it sort of takes the control of power in Dhaka. At the same time, the people-to-people contacts, the dependence of Bangladeshis on medical treatment and medical tourism, if you want to call it, and the number of visas that Indian mission in Dhaka issues to Bangladeshis, going by that, India cannot completely shut down that relationship. And that is where I think diplomacy will have to prevail, and nimble-footed diplomacy, which will have to come into play. And I think saner elements in Bangladesh, if they have some influence on the incoming power structure, will realize that India is still their best bet as far as propping up the economy or boosting the economy is concerned, because there is a market that India provides to Bangladeshi products. India provides, like you said, there are these joint projects in electricity, in water sharing. There are, certain joint agreements that India and Bangladesh have, or river water sharings. If not Tista, there are 53 other rivers that flow into Bangladesh, and all that water has to be shared with India. Similarly, India has been, giving a lot of, doing a lot of, giving a lot of expertise on certain projects in Bangladesh. All that cannot be switched off just because the Prime Minister has resigned and quit and the new government has come in. They'll have to take a call with India, and India will have to also have to do that balancing act, as I mentioned right at the beginning.
On that positive note, I think we should sort of at least call this particular version of this thing to an end. I'm sure we'll have you back again with us very, very soon, because the way things are developing, a lot of things will happen overnight, and a lot of things by tomorrow morning we'll probably have something totally new to look at. Thank you so much. I know you've been busy with a lot of things, but this was,
Thank you. Thank you, Ram. We may have another chat in a couple of days. So let's see how it goes.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Nitin Gokhale, editor-in-chief of statnews.com, explaining to us what the situation is in Bangladesh right now, and looking ahead at what the possibilities and the options are, for, not just for Bangladesh, but also for India. I do hope you enjoyed this particular edition of our show, and I look forward to seeing